It screamed like a man being torn apart. That's the only way I can describe what we heard. In Zone 58, 40 miles west of Grande Cache, Alberta, in October 2019, and I'm a wildland firefighter. I've spent 10 years in remote burns. I know the difference between animal sounds and something else entirely. My brother, my Uncle Ray, and I went in for a moose hunt. Ray's a retired conservation officer who's investigated thousands of wildlife kills. On day 3, we found something that made even him go quiet. A moose carcass dragged uphill and covered with saplings arranged in a deliberate pattern. No claw marks, just a smell we couldn't identify. Then came the knocks in the dark, deep thuds from multiple directions, like communication. And that screaming layered, impossible, with a bass note that shook your chest. When I finally looked through the tent flap, I saw amber yellow eyes, 8 feet off the ground, staring directly at me. We made it out alive, but here's what haunts me. Why were we allowed to leave? I wasn't supposed to be telling this story. That's the first thing you need to understand. When you spend 10 years fighting wildfires in northern Alberta, you learn what belongs out there and what doesn't. You learn the difference between a black bear crashing through deadfall and a moose moving at dusk. You learn how the forest sounds when it's healthy and how it sounds when something's wrong. And you learn to trust your gut when every instinct you have is screaming that you need to leave. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I know the backcountry between Hinton and Grande Cache better than most people know their own neighborhoods. I've spent weeks at a time camped in burn zones, breathing smoke, cutting fire guard at 3 in the morning when the wind shifts. I've had grizzlies walk through camp. I've been caught above tree line in electrical storms that made my hair stand on end. None of that prepared me for Zone 58. This started 2 years before October of 2019, when my Uncle Ray, my mom's older brother, drew a bull moose tag in the lottery. Ray's 62 retired conservation officer, the kind of man who taught me and my younger brother Cole how to read tracks when we were kids. 30-plus years enforcing wildlife laws across Alberta and the Yukon, and he'd been applying for that Zone 58 permit for close to a decade. When his name came up, he called me first. "You boys want to do this, right?" he asked. Just like that. No preamble. Cole and I cleared our schedules. Cole runs heavy equipment for a pipeline contractor, excavators, dozers, that kind of work, and he'd been talking about getting a real hunt in for years. Not the weekend ATV trips we'd done, but something deep. Something that mattered. Ray wanted it to be the 3 of us. His wife had passed 4 years before from cancer, and I think he was looking for something to pass down. A last big trip before his knees gave out completely. We spent those 2 years planning. Ray's got an acreage outside Grande Cache, and we'd meet there on weekends to go over maps, check gear, talk through contingencies. Zone 58 is 40 miles west of town, up in the drainage where the Rockies start to break down into muskeg and black spruce. The access road washed out in 2017, so Parks Canada was doing helicopter drops for permitted hunters. That meant weight limits, careful packing, no room for extras. Ray was old school about communications. No satellite phone. He said phones make people careless, make them think help is always 20 minutes away. We'd have handheld radios for short-range contact between us, GPS beacons for emergency extraction only, and that was it. 12 days of food, 3 rifles, first aid supplies, and enough fuel to boil water. We'd be 7 days in before the scheduled pickup. I remember the night before we left, sitting on Ray's deck, with a beer, looking west toward the mountains. Cole was inside reviewing his GoPro settings for the 100th time he'd gotten into filming hunts for YouTube, had maybe 38 subscribers, dreams of making it more than a hobby. Ray was quiet, the way he gets when he's chewing on something. "You ever hear stories about Zone 58? He finally asked. I said I'd heard it was good moose country. Remote. That's what the harvest data showed. Ray nodded slowly. It is. But hunters leave early sometimes. Equipment goes missing. Bears, probably. Just want you boys to stay loud out there. Stay together. He said it casually, like he was reminding us to check the weather. But Ray doesn't waste words. If he's mentioning something, it's because it matters. Cole came out then, holding up his camera, talking about angles and battery life. The moment passed. We toasted to the hunt, to Ray's permit, to finally getting into real country. The kind of country that doesn't care if you're prepared or not. I wish now that I'd asked Ray what he meant, what he'd heard. But you don't question a man like that, and honestly, I thought I knew better. 10 seasons in the bush. I'd seen wolves take down a cow moose. I'd walked past fresh grizzly kills that were still steaming. I thought I understood what wilderness meant. I was wrong. The helicopter came in low over the treetops on October 15th, mid-morning, the rotors beating the air so hard you could feel it in your chest. Vern was flying contract pilot, mid-50s, the kind of guy who's seen everything and doesn't get impressed by much. He'd flown me into burn sites before, always professional, always calm. But when he sat down on the gravel bar Ray had marked on the topo maps, he didn't shut down the engine. Just hovered there while we offloaded the cash. 3 packs, 3 rifles and cases, 2 duffels of food and gear. We worked fast, hauling everything clear of the rotor wash. The noise was enormous, echoing off the valley walls. When we gave him the thumbs up, Vern leaned out and shouted something I couldn't quite hear over the turbine. I cupped my ear, and he yelled it again. "Stay loud out here." Then he lifted off, banking hard to the east, and the sound faded until there was nothing but the creek and the wind moving through the spruce. Cole stood there grinning, his GoPro already recording from the chest mount, panning across the drainage like he was shooting a documentary. "This is incredible," he said. "Look at this place." He wasn't wrong. Zone 58 sits in a valley that feels older than it should, like the mountains decided to keep it hidden. Black spruce packed so tight you lose the sky, muskeg pockets that'll swallow you to the knee if you step wrong, and a creek running fast and cold down from the peaks to the west. The terrain was claustrophobic, in a way that's hard to explain. The peaks were visible if you looked up, sharp and snow-capped, but the valley itself felt closed in, like being at the bottom of something. We spent the first few hours sorting gear and setting up camp near the gravel bar. Ray wanted us close to the creek for water, high enough that we wouldn't get flooded if it rained. He and I set the tents while Cole strung the food hang between 2 big spruce about 50 yards out. Standard protocol. Keep the food away from where you sleep. Make it hard for bears to reach. Ray checked the knots twice. By early afternoon, we had coffee going on the propane stove, and Ray pulled out his laminated maps to go over the plan. He'd marked ridge lines where moose might be feeding, a beaver pond to the east that looked promising, and a couple of high observation points where we could glass the slopes. The weather was holding clear, cold, maybe 5 degrees Celsius during the day, dropping below 0 at night. Good hunting weather, no wind. We spent the rest of the day getting our bearings. Cole wanted to film everything. The camp setup, Ray explaining how to read moose rubs on the willows, me checking the GPS coordinates against the map. I didn't mind. It gave the trip a sense of occasion, like we were doing something worth documenting. Ray tolerated it with the kind of patience you show a kid who's excited about Christmas. That evening, we glassed the hillsides from camp, taking turns with the binos and the spotting scope. The light went golden, then purple, then faded into dark. We saw a cow moose and her calf about half a mile out, moving through the willows near treeline. Ray watched them for a long time, not saying anything, just observing. That's how he teaches by example, by making you pay attention. We ate freeze-dried chili and bannock bread, cleaned up, and hung everything that smelled like food. Ray checked the rifles one more time, made sure we all knew where the bear spray was clipped to the tent frame. Cole reviewed his footage on the little camera screen already, talking about how he'd edit it. I wrote a few notes in my field book, coordinates, weather, what we'd seen, old habit from fire investigations. Then we turned in. 3 of us in 2 tents, Ray in one and Cole and me in the other. I remember lying there in my sleeping bag, listening to the creek, feeling that good kind of tired you get from a day of hard work and clean air. Cole was out almost immediately, snoring softly. I could hear Ray moving around in his tent, probably reading by headlamp. That's when I noticed the quiet. Not just quiet. Silent. No owls. No distant coyotes. No rustle of squirrels or the occasional crack of a branch settling. Just the creek and the wind, and even those seemed muted. I lay there for a while, trying to figure out what was bothering me. In 10 years of backcountry work, I'd never heard a forest go completely silent like that. There's always something moving, always some animal going about its business. I didn't say anything, didn't want to. Sound jumpy on the first night, but I didn't sleep well either. I kept listening for something, anything, that would break that silence. It never came. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed about fire lines that went on forever and no way out. We woke to frost on the tent fly and that same unnatural quiet. No birds. Nothing. Cole noticed it too. This time I could see it in the way he kept pausing between bites of his oatmeal, head tilted like he was listening for something that should be there but wasn't. "Forest feels dead," he said finally. Ray grunted, sipping his coffee. "Just cold. Animals are bedded down." But Ray didn't believe it either. I could tell by the way he kept scanning the tree line while we packed up for the day's hike. We were heading up to a ridgeline about 2 miles north, where Ray thought we'd find moose sign rubs on the willows, fresh scat, maybe tracks in the soft ground near a seep he'd marked on the map. The hike took us through dense black spruce, branches so tight we had to push through sideways in places. Cole filmed most of it, his GoPro whirring quietly on his chest mount, narrating in a low voice about the terrain and what we were looking for. I let him do his thing. It kept him focused, kept the nervous energy under control. Around mid-morning, we broke out onto the ridgeline, and the view opened up peaks to the west, the valley below us, spruce stretching out like a dark green ocean. Ray found what he was looking for within 20 minutes. Fresh moose rubs on a stand of willows, the bark stripped away, still tacky with sap. He ran his fingers over it, nodded to himself. "Bull?" he said. "Big one. Maybe yesterday, day before." We glassed the slopes for another hour, marked the location on the GPS, and started back toward camp. Ray wanted to set up an observation post at dawn the next morning, catch the moose moving at first light. It felt good, productive, like we were finally getting into the rhythm of the hunt. That's when I saw the stones. We were maybe half a mile from camp, following a game trail that wound through the spruce, when I noticed them off to the right, about 30 yards into the trees. A line of stones, maybe 8 or 9 of them, stacked in a cairn-like formation. Not tall, maybe 2 feet high, but deliberate. Too deliberate. I stopped. "Hey, look at that." Cole came up beside me, panning his camera toward the stones. Ray moved past us, barely glancing over. "Survey marker," he said. "Old trapper cache, maybe. You see them out here sometimes." But it didn't feel like a survey marker. The stones were too evenly spaced, too intentional. And there was something else. The trees around them looked wrong. Branches, broken at odd angles, some kind of pattern I couldn't quite parse. I pulled out my field notebook and sketched it quickly, just the basic shape, the spacing between the stones. "You cataloging rocks now?" Cole asked, half joking. I shrugged. "Just habit." We kept moving. Ray set the pace, steady and sure, but I kept looking back over my shoulder. That feeling you get when you know someone's watching you, even though you can't see them. The back of your neck prickling. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. First time in country this remote, first time with this much silence. Back at camp, we ate lunch and went over the plan for the next morning. Ray wanted us up at 4:30 in position by first light. Cole was excited, already talking about camera angles and how he'd set up the tripod for a stable shot. I cleaned my rifle, checked the scope 0, tried to shake that uneasy feeling. That evening after dinner, Cole was reviewing his GoPro footage on the little screen, scrolling through the day's hike. He stopped suddenly, rewound, played it again. Then he looked up at me, his face pale in the fading light. "Come here," he said quietly. "Look at this." I leaned over his shoulder. He'd paused on a frame from the ridgeline, the wide shot of the valley and the trees. In the background, maybe 200 yards out, something was moving through the willows, dark, upright. 2 legs. "Play it," I said. He hit play. The figure moved across the frame for maybe 3 seconds, smooth, unhurried, definitely bipedal, then disappeared into the spruce. Cole rewound it, played it again. Same thing. Not a bear on its hind legs, not a moose. Something walking. Ray was at the fire, boiling water for coffee. I called him over. He watched the footage twice, his face unreadable. Then he handed the camera back to Cole. "Trick of the light," he said. "Shadow moving through the willows. Happens all the time." But his voice was flat, unconvincing. And when he walked back to the fire, I saw him glance toward the tree line. Just for a second. He'd seen it too. He just wasn't ready to say what it was. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about those stones, about the figure in the willows, and about Ray's warning back at his acreage. Stay loud, stay together, like he'd known something we didn't. Day 3 started wrong. Ray was already up when I crawled out of my sleeping bag, standing by the fire with his coffee, staring into the trees. He hadn't slept, either I could see it in the shadows under his eyes. Change of plans, he said. We're splitting up. I want to cover more ground, Cole protested, but Ray cut him off. You and I check the beaver pond to the east. Your brother loops west along the creek, looks for tracks. We'll radio every hour. Meet back here by noon. It made sense tactically, but something about it felt off. Ray doesn't split groups unless he's confident about the area, and he didn't seem confident. But I didn't argue. 10 years of fire crews teaches you to trust your superior's call, even when you don't fully understand it. I headed out alone around 7:30, following the creek downstream, my rifle slung across my chest, handheld radio, clipped to my pack strap. The morning was cold, maybe 2 degrees, and the frost hadn't burned off yet. Everything was still, no wind, no sound except the creek and my own footsteps crunching through the frost. I found the kill around 10 o'clock. I smelled it first, that sickly sweet rot you get with dead animals, but something else underneath. Musky, sour, almost like ammonia, but not quite. It hit me maybe 50 yards before I saw it, strong enough to make my eyes water. The moose was young, maybe a 3-year-old bull. It had been dragged up a slope, not down, up, which made no sense, and positioned in a small clearing. The body was gutted cleanly, the entrails pulled out and scattered. But there were no claw marks on the hide, no teeth marks. The kill looked surgical. But what stopped me cold was the debris. Something had broken off saplings and arranged them over the carcass in a crosshatch pattern, almost like a lattice. Not random, not scattered by wind or animals. Woven, deliberate, architectural. My hands were shaking when I keyed the radio. Ray, come in. Static, then his voice. Go ahead. I've got something. You need to see this. West of camp, maybe half a mile. Follow the creek downstream. On our way. I stood there waiting, trying to breathe through my mouth to avoid the smell. My rifle in my hands now. The clearing felt wrong. Too quiet. Too watched. That primitive part of your brain that knows when your prey it was screaming at me to move, to get out of there. But I stayed. I'd called Ray. I had to wait. They arrived 20 minutes later, Cole filming as always, Ray moving fast despite the limp he tries to hide. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, took it all in, then walked slowly around the carcass. He measured the drag marks with his bootlaces, examined the broken saplings, photographed everything with his disposable camera. His face was tight, controlled, but his hands were steady, and that steadiness was more terrifying than panic would have been. This was Ray going into professional mode, and that meant he was scared. What did this? Cole asked. His voice was too high. Bears don't build things. Ray didn't answer. He crouched by the drag marks, ran his fingers along the ground. No claw marks, he said quietly. No paw prints. Just disturbance. Like it was carried. By what? Ray stood up, looked at me. His eyes were dark. Resigned. We're moving camp. South, higher ground. We pack and relocate before dark. Ray. Now, he said. We do it now. We hiked back to camp in silence. That smell stayed with me the whole way, like it had soaked into my clothes. Or maybe it was just in my head. Cole was pale, checking his camera obsessively, rewinding the footage of the kill over and over. Ray walked ahead, setting a pace that was almost too fast, and I realized he wasn't just moving us away from the kill, he was moving us before something came back to it. We packed in under 2 hours, said nothing, just worked. Tents down, gear sorted, food restrung. Ray left half our firewood behind. We relocated a mile downriver to a rocky outcrop with better sight lines, higher ground, harder to approach without being seen. Defensive terrain, the kind of place you choose when you're expecting trouble. As we set up the new camp, the sun was already dropping behind the peaks. The shadows were growing long, and that silence, that terrible, unnatural silence pressed in around us like something alive. Ray built the fire. Cole sat on a rock, staring at nothing, and I kept looking back toward the trees, toward the drainage where we'd found that kill, wondering what we'd walked into, and wondering if it was watching us leave. The new camp felt exposed. Ray said that was the point. Nothing could approach without us seeing it, but it also meant we were visible from every direction. We set the tents close together this time, maybe 10 feet apart instead of the usual 50. Nobody talked about why. Cole tried to start a conversation while we cooked dinner, something about the footage he'd captured, but it died after a few sentences. Ray was staring into the fire, his jaw working like he was chewing on something. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "You've seen this before," I said, "haven't you?" Ray was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Twice. Once in the Yukon, 1984. Once near Jasper, 1996. Same thing? The arrangement? Close enough." He poked the fire with a stick. "Both times, the hunters left early, reported pressure, bad feelings. One guy said he heard knocking sounds at night. The other said something followed him back to camp." He paused. I filed both as inconclusive. What else was I going to write? Cole leaned forward. "You think it's a bear, right?" "Has to be." Ray looked at him. "You ever see a bear build something, Cole?" "No, but you ever see a bear drag a kill uphill? Arrange branches in a pattern?" Ray's voice was flat. "I've handled problem bears, tranquilized them, relocated them. I know what they do. This isn't that." "Then what is it?" I asked. Ray shook his head. "I don't know, but both those other times, the kills happened right before things escalated, like a warning, or a territory marker. The implication hung in the air between us. We were in something's territory, and it knew we were here. We finished dinner in silence. Ray insisted we do a full perimeter check before dark, all three of us together, looking for tracks, scat, any sign of what might be close. We found nothing. Just that same oppressive quiet, like the forest was holding its breath. Back at camp, Ray pulled out his maps and calculated distances. 17 miles to the nearest cut-block road, he said. Maybe 19 if we have to detour around rough terrain. 2 days on foot if we push. Helicopter pickup is 4 days. Out. "You want to leave?" Cole asked. "I want options." Ray folded the map. "We see how tonight goes." As the light faded, we built the fire higher than we needed to. Wasteful, but nobody cared. We kept the rifles close, loaded, safeties on, but within reach. Ray took first watch. Cole and I crawled into our tent, but I knew neither of us would sleep. Around 8:30, as I lay there staring at the tent roof, it started. A knock. Deep. Resonant. Like someone hitting a tree with an axe, but hollow. It came from the ridge above us, maybe 200 yards out. One strike, then silence. I held my breath. Cole grabbed my arm in the dark. Then another knock, different direction, east, maybe. Then a third, from the south, triangulating, surrounding. Ray's voice came low from outside the tent. "Stay quiet. Stay still." The knocks continued, sporadic, always from different bearings, not random, deliberate, and getting closer. The knocks went on for hours. Sometimes single strikes, sometimes 3 or 4 in rapid succession, like a conversation happening in the dark around us. Ray kept us in the tents, headlamps off, rifles across our laps. I could hear him breathing outside, steady and controlled, but I knew he was afraid. You don't keep that kind of discipline unless you're fighting panic. Cole was shaking beside me. Not violently, just a constant tremor, his hands gripping his rifle so tight his knuckles must have hurt. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. We both understood we were listening to something intelligent, something that knew exactly where we were. Around midnight, I tried to rationalize it. Falling deadfall trees contract in the cold. Branches snap. Thermal expansion. Maybe even another hunting party, though we'd seen no sign of humans. But the pattern was wrong. Too rhythmic. Too responsive. When one knock echoed from the north, another would answer from the south, like they were communicating. At 2 a.m, the knocks stopped. The silence that followed was worse. At least with the knocks, we knew where they were. Now, there was nothing. Just the sound of our own breathing and the fire crackling outside. Then the vocalization started. It came from the west, maybe 100 yards out. Not a roar, not a howl. Something between a human shout and an animal bellow, so deep I felt it in my chest, vibrating through the ground. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, then cut off abruptly. Cole fumbled for his phone, hands shaking, and hit record. The sound came again, closer this time, and now I could hear layers in it, a high note that sounded almost like a man screaming, and underneath, that bass frequency that shouldn't exist in a throat. It reverberated through the trees, echoing back on itself. Ray's voice came sharp from outside. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." The vocalization came a third time, from a different direction, north, then east. Like the knocks, it was moving around us. Or there were multiple sources. I couldn't tell which was worse. Cole was crying quietly beside me, still holding his phone up, recording. I put my hand on his shoulder, squeezed. We were both terrified, but we couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Complete silence. No wind, no animals, nothing. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. Ray finally spoke. "First light. We searched the perimeter. All of us together. Don't go out alone." Dawn came slowly. None of us had slept. When there was finally enough light to see, we crawled out of the tents, rifles ready. Ray's face was gray with exhaustion, but his hands were still steady. We walked the perimeter in a wide circle, maybe 50 yards out from camp, looking for tracks, disturbance, anything. Found nothing. No prints, no scat, no broken branches at ground level. It was like whatever made those sounds had been floating, but the silence remained. No birds, no squirrels. Even the creek seemed quieter. Cole played back the audio on his phone. The vocalization was there, clear and undeniable, that impossible layered sound. Ray listened once, nodded, said nothing. We made coffee. 8 energy bars. Nobody suggested staying another night. Day 4. We decided to stay put and hunt from camp rather than ranging far. Nobody said it out loud, but we all understood we weren't leaving each other's sight again. The hunt had become secondary to something else. Survival, maybe. Or just making it through without admitting what we were dealing with. Cole and I took up positions on a small rise overlooking the opposite slope, maybe 300 yards from camp. Ray stayed back, organizing gear, prepping game bags we probably wouldn't need, checking the food hang, keeping busy. His limp was worse now, 3 days of hard hiking on bad knees, but he didn't complain. We glassed the hillside in silence. Cole had his GoPro running, but he wasn't narrating anymore. The forest was still dead, quiet. No birds, no squirrels chattering. Just whine through the spruce and the distant sound of the creek. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, like the whole valley was holding its breath. Around 10:30, Cole grabbed my arm. "There," he whispered, pointing across the drainage. I swung my binoculars to follow his line of sight. At first, I saw nothing, just trees, shadows, the usual texture of wilderness. Then movement. A large dark shape crossing a clearing, maybe 400 yards out. Upright, bipedal. Moving with a smooth, unhurried stride that didn't match anything I knew. I dropped the binos and brought up my rifle scope. The magnification was better, clearer, and I saw it. Massive. Maybe 7 feet tall, possibly more. Covered in dark hair, not fur. Hair that caught the light in a way that looked almost reddish-brown where the sun hit it. The arms were too long, hanging low, swinging as it walked. The stride was smooth, confident, like it knew exactly where it was going. Human-like, but not human. Too big, too powerful. It crossed from one tree line to another in maybe 8 seconds. Then it was gone, swallowed by the spruce. My hands were shaking. I lowered the rifle slowly, trying to process what I'd just seen. Beside me, Cole was fumbling with his camera, rewinding, his breathing fast and shallow. "Tell me you saw that," he said. "Tell me you saw it too." I saw it. What was it? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because naming it would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. We hiked back to camp fast. Ray looked up from the game bags when we came in, read our faces, and set down his knife. Cole pulled out the GoPro, hands still shaking, and pulled up the footage. The 3 of us crowded around the tiny screen. The footage was shaky. Cole's hands had been trembling even then, but it was there. The dark shape crossing the clearing, upright, bipedal, unmistakable. Ray watched it once, twice. His face showed nothing, but I saw his jaw tighten. "Could be a bear," Cole said, but his voice was desperate, pleading. "Right? Bears stand up sometimes." "That's not a bear," Ray said quietly. "Then what?" "Pack your day packs," Ray cut him off. "Essentials only. Water, first aid, fire kit, extra shells. Leave the heavy gear in the tents." "We're leaving?" I asked. "Not yet, but if we need to move fast, I don't want us fumbling with tent stakes." Ray's voice was calm, controlled, but his eyes told a different story. This was a man preparing for the worst. "Scheduled pickup is 4 days out. We can make it 4 days." But none of us believed that. Not anymore. We spent the afternoon organizing, sorting gear into what we'd carry and what we'd leave behind. Ray kept his plaster casting kit, his disposable camera, his journal. Everything else was expendable. Cole checked and rechecked his GoPro batteries, his phone charge. I cleaned my rifle, loaded extra magazines, tried not to think about what I'd seen through that scope. As the sun dropped behind the peaks, we built the fire bigger than necessary. Wasteful, but nobody cared. We needed the light, needed the psychological barrier. Ray kept his .45-70 across his lap, and I noticed he'd switched from hunting rounds to hard-cast bear defense loads, the kind of ammunition you use when you need to stop something big. That night, we took turns on watch, 2 hours each. Nobody slept anyway. I kept thinking about that figure crossing the clearing. The smooth stride, the confidence. It hadn't been hiding, hadn't been cautious. It had walked across that open ground like it owned the valley. Because it did. Ray wanted to check the GPS beacon coordinates before dark, make sure the helicopter could find us if we called for early extraction. It made sense tactically, but I think he also needed to move, to do something concrete instead of waiting for whatever came next. We hiked downstream together, staying tight, rifles ready. The afternoon light was fading fast, that golden hour before dusk when shadows stretch long and vision gets tricky. Ray led, moving steady despite his limp, checking the GPS unit every few minutes. Around 4:30, we reached a mudflat beside the creek where the water had receded, leaving fresh silt exposed. And there they were. Tracks. I saw them first and stopped so suddenly Cole nearly walked into me. Ray came back, looked where I was pointing, and went very still. The tracks were enormous. 17 inches long, maybe more. 5 distinct toes, spread wide like fingers. A clear arch. A heel impression pressed deep into the mud. The stride spacing was over 6 feet something, walking upright with legs much longer than any human's. Ray knelt beside them, pulled out his measuring tape, laid it beside the largest print. He photographed it with his disposable camera, using his hand for scale. Then he touched the edge of the track gently, testing the moisture content the way the mud had compressed. "Fresh," he said quietly. "Maybe an hour old, maybe less." The depth was what got me. Whatever made these tracks weighed hundreds of pounds, enough to sink deep into mud that barely registered my own boot prints. I thought about the figure crossing the clearing, 7 feet tall, maybe 8, built like nothing I'd ever seen. Ray was already pulling out his plaster casting kit. He mixed the powder and water in a plastic bag, working quickly, professionally. This was Ray at his best: documentation, evidence, procedure. The thing that kept him functional when everything else was falling apart. He poured the plaster into the clearest track, smoothed it, built up the edges. "Needs 30 minutes to set," he said. We wait. We spread out in a loose perimeter, watching the tree line. The forest was still silent. No birds, no wind, just that oppressive, watching quiet that had followed us since the first night. Then I heard it. Branches snapping upslope. Not random, rhythmic, deliberate. Something moving parallel to us, maybe 50 yards out, staying hidden in the spruce. Ray heard it too. He stood slowly, his .45-70 in his hands. "Stay calm," he said softly. "Don't run, let the cast set." The branch breaking continued, east to west, pacing us. Sometimes it stopped, and the silence was worse than the sound. Then it would start again, always just out of sight, always close enough that we could hear every snap, every crack of wood. Cole was breathing fast beside me, his rifle up scanning the trees. It's watching us, he whispered. I know, Ray said. What do we do? We wait. We don't show fear. We don't run. But fear was all I had. That primitive part of my brain, the part that evolved to recognize predators, was screaming. We were being evaluated, tested. Something was deciding whether we were a threat or prey. The branch breaking stopped. Complete silence. Ray checked his watch. 20 minutes. Cass needs 20 more minutes. It felt like hours. We stood there, rifles ready, watching the forest, listening for any sound. Nothing. Just that terrible, empty quiet. When the plaster finally set, Ray pulled it free carefully, wrapped it in his spare shirt, and stowed it in his pack. Move, he said. Back to camp. Stay together. Don't look back. We hiked fast, not quite running but close. The whole way, I felt eyes on my back, that crawling sensation between your shoulder blades when you know something's watching. But every time I glanced back, there was nothing, just trees and shadows and silence. We reached camp as the last light faded. Ray set the plaster cast carefully beside the fire to finish drying, then turned to us. His face was tight, controlled, but I could see the fear in his eyes now. He wasn't hiding it anymore. It knows we're here, he said quietly. What do we do? I asked. Ray looked at the plaster cast, then at the darkening trees. We survive tonight, then we decide. Back at camp, we sat around the fire and had the conversation none of us wanted to have. Cole wanted to stay. He had footage now, the figure crossing the clearing, the tracks, the audio from the vocalizations. He kept saying it was incredible, that we had documentation of something people had been searching for decades to find. This is it, he said, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and excitement. This is proof. We can't just leave. Ray didn't look at him. He was staring into the fire, his .45-70 across his lap. We're not equipped for this. We have rifles. We don't know what we're dealing with. Ray cut him off. His voice was flat, final. Whatever made those tracks, whatever we saw today, it's not afraid of us. It's watching us, testing us, and we don't have the gear or the backup to handle what comes next. I understood what Ray wasn't saying. This wasn't a hunt anymore. We'd become the prey. And the only smart move when you realize that is to leave before the predator decides you're worth the effort. We hike out tomorrow, Ray continued, 17 miles to the cut block road. 2 days if we push hard, or we call for early extraction at dawn. Cole looked at me, desperate for an ally. Part of me understood his position. This was exactly what he dreamed about: viral footage, a story nobody could dismiss. But I'd also seen the size of those tracks, heard the intelligence in those vocalizations. Whatever was out there, it didn't want us here. One more night, I said finally. We call for pickup at first light. If we can get the helicopter in tomorrow, we're out. If not, we hike. Ray nodded slowly. Cole didn't argue, but I could see the conflict in his face. He knew leaving was smart, but he also knew we might never get another chance like this. We built the fire higher than we should have, burning through wood we'd need if we stayed longer. But none of us believed we'd be here long enough for that to matter. Ray assigned watch shifts, 2 hours each, rotating through the night. We kept the rifles loaded, bear spray within reach, headlamps ready. Dinner was quiet. Freeze-dried beef stroganoff that tasted like cardboard, but we ate it because we needed the calories. Cole checked his camera batteries obsessively. Ray cleaned his rifle for the 3rd time that day, even though it didn't need it. I tried to read the map by firelight, calculating distances, planning routes, anything to keep my mind occupied. Dusk came fast. The temperature was dropping maybe -5, cold enough that our breath fogged. The sky was clear, stars beginning to show, but the forest remained dead silent. No owls, no distant wolves. Just that oppressive quiet that had followed us for days. Around 9 o'clock it started. The screaming came from 3 directions at once, west, north, and south, like they'd surrounded us. Not howls, not roars. Screaming. The only word that fits is screaming, but that doesn't capture it. It sounded like a man being torn apart, that high-pitched agony, but underneath was a bass note so deep I felt it in my chest. Infrasonic. the kind of frequency that shouldn't come from a throat. Cole grabbed his phone, hands shaking, and hit record. Ray stood slowly, rifle ready, scanning the tree line. I did the same, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break a rib. The screaming continued. Sometimes it would stop for a few seconds, and the silence was worse than the sound. Then it would start again, from a different direction, echoing through the valley, layering on itself until I couldn't tell where it was coming from anymore. Cole was crying. I could hear him behind me, this quiet, terrified sobbing he was trying to suppress. Ray's jaw was set, his face carved from stone, but I saw his hands tighten on the rifle. Even he was afraid now. The screaming went on for 10 minutes, maybe longer. Time stopped meaning anything. Then, as suddenly as it started, it cut off. Complete silence. No echo. No fading. Just gone. We stood there, rifles ready, listening. Nothing. Just the fire crackling, and our own ragged breathing. "What the hell was that?" Cole whispered. Ray lowered his rifle slowly. "A warning," he said quietly. "Or a threat. Maybe both." We didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. We sat around the fire, taking turns staring into the darkness, jumping at every sound, the wind. A branch settling, our own imaginations filling the silence with horrors. But nothing came. Not then. The real terror was still hours away. The rain started around 11 o'clock. Soft at first, then harder, drumming on the tent fly, turning the ground to mud. We'd retreated into the tents finally, rifles loaded, headlamps within reach. Ray was in his tent alone. Cole and I were together, lying in our sleeping bags fully dressed, boots still on, ready to move. Around midnight I heard it. Breathing. Not wind through the trees, not rain on fabric. Breathing. Deep, slow, deliberate, close enough to hear over the rain. Cole grabbed my arm in the dark. He'd heard it too. The breathing moved around the tent, circling. I could track it by sound west side, then north and east. Methodical, like it was inspecting us. The footfalls were subtle, barely there, but I felt them. A faint vibration through the ground, like something massive moving carefully. I reached for my headlamp, and Cole's hand clamped on my wrist. "Don't," he whispered, barely audible. But I had to see. I had to know. 10 years of firework teaches you that the unknown is always worse than the reality. So I clicked the headlamp on red mode, less visible, better for preserving night vision, and slowly, carefully, moved toward the tent flap. The breathing stopped. I froze. My hand was on the zipper, the headlamp casting a dim red glow. The silence stretched out, broken only by the rain. Then the breathing resumed, directly in front of the tent. Maybe 6 feet away. Maybe less. I pulled the zipper down slowly, one tooth at a time, trying not to make noise. The gap widened. I leaned forward, peering out into the darkness, and switched the headlamp to white. Eyes. Amber yellow eyes, reflecting the light, 8 feet off the ground, unblinking, staring directly at me. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. Those eyes held mine for 3 seconds, maybe the longest 3 seconds of my life. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. This was something intelligent. Something that recognized me as another thinking being and was deciding what to do about it. Then it turned. Slowly, deliberately, and walked away on 2 legs. I heard every step. The crack of deadfall snapping under its weight, not twigs, thick branches, wrist-thick pieces that splintered like gunshots. The sound moved away from the tent, into the trees, fading but never quite disappearing. I sat there, headlamp still on, staring into the darkness. Behind me, Cole was breathing in short, panicked gasps. From Ray's tent, nothing. No sound, no movement. But I knew he was awake, knew he'd heard everything. I finally zipped the tent flap closed and switched off the headlamp. In the darkness, Cole spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you see it?" "Eyes," I said. 8 feet up, amber yellow. "What was it?" I didn't answer, because I knew, and he knew, and saying it out loud wouldn't change anything. We'd seen something that wasn't supposed to exist. Something that had walked right up to our tent, looked me in the eyes, and chosen to leave. For now, we didn't sleep, didn't talk. Just lay there in the dark, listening to the rain, waiting for dawn. Every sound made my heart race, every branch settling, every gust of wind. But the breathing didn't return. The footfalls didn't come back. At first, "Light," Ray called out from his tent. "Pack up, we're leaving, now!" We moved fast, collapsed the tents, stuffed everything into our day packs, left the tent stakes in the ground, abandoned the propane stove, and most of our food. We took the rifles, the plaster cast wrapped carefully in Ray's spare shirt, water, first aid, fire kit. Nothing else mattered. Ray moved with purpose, his limp forgotten, adrenaline overriding pain. Cole was pale, shaking, but he kept moving. I did a final sweep of the camp, looking for anything critical we might need. By 6:30, we were on the trail. 17 miles to the cut block road. Ray set a pace just under jogging, stopping only to check the GPS and confirm our bearing. We didn't look back. Didn't discuss what happened. We just moved. The forest was still silent. No birds, no squirrels, just our own noise, boots on mud, packs creaking, breath coming hard and fast. And that terrible feeling between my shoulder blades, the certainty that something was watching us leave. Ray's hands were steady on his rifle. His face was set, determined. This was a man who'd made his decision. We were getting out, and nothing was going to stop us. But as we pushed east, deeper into that claustrophobic spruce forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only leaving because we'd been allowed to. The first 8 miles were pure adrenaline. Ray pushed us hard, barely stopping, and neither Cole nor I complained. We just moved, boots pounding mud, breath coming in ragged gasps. Every shadow felt like movement. Every distant crack of wood felt like pursuit. Around mile 8, we found it, a clearing we'd passed on the way in. But now, in the center, stood a structure, teepee-shaped, maybe 10 feet tall, made from logs and branches woven together with moss. Deliberate, architectural, and it hadn't been there before. Ray stopped, pulled out his disposable camera, and took 3 quick photos. He didn't approach it, didn't touch, just documented it and kept moving. "Are we being followed?" Cole asked, his voice thin. Ray's answer was immediate. "Assume yes." We picked up the pace. The structure faded behind us, but the implication hung heavy. Whatever was out here, it was active, building, marking territory, and it knew exactly where we were. The forest remained silent, except for our own noise. No animals, no birds, just us, crashing through the bush like wounded prey. By mile 10, my legs were burning. Cole was limping blisters, probably, but he didn't slow down. Ray's face was tight with pain, his bad knee clearly screaming, but he never broke stride. Fear is a powerful motivator. We stopped once for water, maybe 30 seconds, rifles ready, scanning the tree line, nothing visible. But I felt it, that pressure, that watching sensation. "Keep moving," Ray said, and we did. The rain picked up around noon, cold and steady, soaking through our jackets. The trail turned to mud, slippery and treacherous. We slid down slopes, caught ourselves on trees, kept pushing east. Around mile 13, I started hearing it. Distant knocking, behind us. Faint, but there. Ray heard it too. I saw him glance back, jaw tight, but he said nothing, just kept moving. The knocking grew fainter as we pushed forward. Either we were outpacing it, or it was letting us go. I didn't know which was worse. Mile 13. We had to stop. Cole was staggering, his face gray with exhaustion. Ray's limp was pronounced now, every step visible pain. I was running on fumes, legs shaking. We rested at a creek crossing, maybe 2 minutes, gulping water from our bottles, trying to catch our breath. That's when I saw them. Stones across the trail. Maybe 7 or 8 of them, each fist-sized, placed in a line, evenly spaced. Deliberate. A boundary marker. Ray saw them too. He stood slowly, stared at the line for a long moment, then stepped over it without comment. But I felt it, that visceral urge not to cross. Every instinct I had was screaming to stop, turn back, find another route. I crossed anyway. Cole followed. Within an hour, the knocking started again. Behind us now, definitely behind us, growing fainter with each mile. The rain was harder now, turning the trail to soup. We slipped, caught ourselves, kept moving. Around 5 o'clock, the forest changed. The spruce thinned. Light broke through. And suddenly we were there, the cut-block road. Decommissioned, overgrown, but drivable. Ray pulled out the GPS beacon, hands shaking with exhaustion, and activated it. Emergency extraction. He input our coordinates, confirmed the signal, then collapsed against a stump. "Now we wait," he said. We sat in the open, rifles across our laps, watching the tree line. The silence felt different here, less oppressive, like we'd crossed an invisible threshold. The knocking had stopped. The forest was just forest again, no watching presence, no pressure. We'd made it out. Or we'd been let out. Cole was crying quietly, relief and exhaustion mixing. Ray just stared west, back toward the drainage, his face unreadable. I checked my watch. 17 miles in under 11 hours. We'd practically run. "Think it's still back there?" Cole asked. Ray nodded slowly. "Always has been." 90 minutes later, we heard the truck coming. The Fish and Wildlife truck was a white F-250 with the provincial logo on the door. The officer who climbed out was young, late 20s, maybe with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She had that earnest, by-the-book look of someone still early in their career. "You guys the emergency beacon?" she asked, walking over. "I'm Officer Carla Hendricks. Got your coordinates about 2 hours ago." Ray stood slowly, favoring his bad knee. "Ray Dennison, retired CO. These are my nephews." Something shifted in her expression when he said retired CO. Professional courtesy, maybe. Or just recognition that she was dealing with someone who knew the system. "What's the situation?" she asked, pulling out a tablet. "Report," said Wildlife Concern. Ray nodded toward his pack. "Got some photos, audio recording. Want to see?" We followed her to the truck. Ray spread out the disposable camera photos on the tailgate, the moose kill, the tracks, the structure we'd found on the hike out. Carla examined them carefully, her face neutral. Then Ray pulled out his phone and played Cole's recording of the vocalization. The sound came through tinny and compressed, but it was still there. That layered scream, that impossible bass note. Carla listened once, then again. I watched her shoulders tighten, saw her jaw set. "Interesting," she said carefully. "What's your assessment?" Ray's answer was measured. Unknown large animal. Bipedal based on track morphology. Territorial behavior. Possible threat to hunters in the area. Carla nodded slowly, making notes on her tablet. Track size is consistent, with grizzly. The vocalization could be elk bugle with acoustic distortion. These valleys create weird echoes. The kill site shows predator activity, but the arrangement of debris is likely coincidental. I watched Ray's face. He didn't argue, didn't push back, just listened. "I'll file a wildlife concern report," Carla continued. "But honestly, this looks like standard bear activity. You guys made the right call leaving, but I don't think you were in immediate danger." "Appreciate you coming out," Ray said quietly. In the truck, on the way back to Grande Cache, I sat in the back seat and watched Ray's reflection in the side mirror. His face was grim, resigned, almost sad. He'd known this would happen. Known that no matter what evidence we brought out, it would be explained away. Carla dropped us at Ray's acreage after dark. "Glad you guys are safe," she said, and I could hear it in her voice. She thought we'd spooked ourselves. Seen shadows and made them into monsters. "Thanks for the ride," Ray said. We stood in his driveway and watched her taillights disappear. Cole was shaking, coming down from the adrenaline finally. I felt hollow, exhausted. Ray just stared west, toward the mountains we couldn't see in the dark. "She didn't believe us," Cole said. "No," Ray agreed. "She didn't. But we have evidence. We have photos that could be anything, audio that could be elk, tracks that could be bear." Ray turned to face us. "That's how it works. That's how it's always worked." He was right. I knew it then, standing in that driveway, looking at the mountains. We'd brought back proof, and it didn't matter. Because proof is only proof if someone's willing to see it. 2 weeks later, I was back at work on a controlled burn near Edson. The crew was good, the weather was holding, and the fire line was progressing on schedule. Everything was normal, professional, safe. But I wasn't sleeping. Every night, I'd lie in my bunk at the fire camp and hear that breathing. Deep, slow, deliberate. I'd see those amber-yellow eyes, 8 feet off the ground, holding my gaze. And I'd wake up with my heart racing, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. Cole sent me an email with the edited GoPro footage. He'd stabilized it, color-corrected it, done everything he could to make it clear. The figure crossing the clearing was there, unmistakable to me. But when I watched it on my laptop, I understood. It was shaky, dark. Could be a bear, could be a man in a costume, could be anything if you didn't want to see what it really was. He'd posted it to his YouTube channel. 73 views. The comments were what you'd expect. Fake. Obviously a bear. Nice costume, bro. One person said it looked interesting and asked for GPS coordinates. Cole didn't respond. Ray called on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting outside the fire camp, watching smoke rise from a controlled burn 3 kilometers north. Fish and Wildlife closed the report, he said without preamble. Official file says, probable grizzly, no action required. That's it? That's it. He paused. I'm not applying for Zone 58 permits again. Yeah, I said. I figured. Another pause. Then, you believe what we saw out there? I thought about those tracks, that vocalization, the eyes staring at me through the tent flap. Yeah, I said. I believe it. Me too, Ray said quietly. I believe something wanted us gone, and we were smart enough to leave. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, then hung up. I sat there in the fading light, looking west toward mountains I couldn't see from here, and thought about that plaster cast. It's on my mantle now, wrapped in a towel. I haven't shown it to anyone outside the family. Cole has his footage, Ray has his photos, but we all understand that evidence doesn't matter if no one wants to look at it. I still go hunting, but I don't go alone anymore, and I don't go to drainages that feel too quiet. There's a difference between normal forest silence and the kind of silence we heard in Zone 58. You know it when you feel it. That watching presence. That sense that something older than you is deciding whether you're worth the trouble. The plaster cast sits on my mantle, wrapped in a towel. 17 inches long, 5 toes, a clear arch. Stride spacing that shouldn't be possible for any known animal in North America. Some nights I unwrap it and just look at it, run my fingers over the contours, and I think about those eyes, holding my gaze for 3 seconds before turning away. We were allowed to leave. I'm certain of that now, present day. I'm 37 now, 3 years past Zone 58. I still work fires, still spend weeks at a time in the backcountry. But something changed out there. Something I can't quite name. I hunt differently now. Never alone. Never in drainages that feel wrong. And I've learned to recognize that the wrongness, the silence that's too complete, the forest that feels like it's holding its breath. Other hunters don't notice it, or they dismiss it. But once you've felt it, really felt it, you can't unknow it. I started researching after we got back. The BFRO database, Canadian sighting maps, historical reports from Parks Canada and Fish and Wildlife. Zone 58 has a cluster of incidents going back to the 1970s, hunters leaving early, equipment loss, vague reports of pressure and unusual activity, all of them dismissed, all of them filed away as bears or elk or spooked civilians. How many others left early and never said why? How many saw those tracks, heard those vocalizations, felt those eyes watching, and kept quiet because they knew no one would believe them? The plaster cast is still on my mantle. I showed it to a wildlife biologist once, at a conference in Calgary. He examined it carefully, measured it, took photos. Then he said it was consistent, with a grizzly print, possibly distorted by melting or ground subsidence. I didn't argue, just thanked him and left. That's the thing about evidence. A cast, a photo, a recording, none of it matters if you weren't there. And maybe that's by design. Maybe that's how something that large, that intelligent, stays hidden in an age of satellites and trail cameras and constant human presence, by existing just beyond the threshold of proof. Cole doesn't upload hunting videos anymore. He still has his GoPro, still films sometimes, but the Zone 58 footage sits on his hard drive unwatched. He told me once, about 6 months after we got back, that the scream affected him more than he'd admitted, that he hears it sometimes, when he's operating equipment, that bass note reverberating through his chest. Ray passed away last year. Heart attack, sudden, at his kitchen table. I was the one who found him when he didn't answer his phone for 3 days. His journal was open on the table, the personal one, not the official CO notes. The last entry was dated 2 days before he died. It just said, "Some things we're not meant to understand. Some territories we're not meant to enter." I'm grateful we got out. I have his journal now. It's in a box with the plaster cast and Cole's hard drive. Evidence that means nothing to anyone who wasn't there. Last weekend, I took my daughter tracking on my property outside Hinton. She's 6, sharp as a tack, asks questions about everything. We found deer tracks near the creek, and I showed her how to read them, direction of travel, how long ago, whether the animal was walking or running. She looked up at me with those serious eyes and asked, "Dad, are there monsters in the woods?" I thought about those amber yellow eyes, that 17-inch track, the breathing outside the tent. "Not monsters," I said. "Just things we don't understand yet. And if you ever feel like something's watching you and doesn't want you, then trust that feeling and leave." She nodded, processing this. I looked west toward the Rockies, those peaks sharp against the sky. Zone 58 is out there somewhere, 40 miles past Grande Cache. And something else is out there too. Something that decided 3 men weren't worth the trouble. Something that let us leave. Ray's words echo in my head sometimes, when I'm alone in the backcountry. Some hunts, you're not the only one hunting. You can believe it or not. Doesn't change what's true.